Hi there. Today I'm using my notes. I don't want this to be another one of those rambly videos where I just blather on about God knows what for 10 minutes. Instead, let's make this one a little more focused. Proper term to use for photography video, isn't it? Uh, One of the things that I've talked about in the past was the onslaught of new camera models that have come out recently and all the fuss that's been made over it. And I think I saw a video and I read a response to the video recently talking about the fact that sometimes we make far too much of this idea of upgrading. The fact is that whatever camera system you're using now, unless it really holds you back, for instance, if you've got something like my old Pentax DS here, it has a buffer of only like 5 shots, and it's at about 3 frames per second. Not exactly a sports camera. If that's the camera you have, then and you want to shoot sports, you're going to need something faster. Um, if you have an older model that's very big and very heavy, and you don't want to carry it around, then maybe you're in line for one of the newer, lighter mirrorless cameras. But the fact is that simply changing for the sake of changing, or thinking that some little feature is going to suddenly make you a better photographer, that's a big mistake. I believe I've said this in an earlier video. Every time I've upgraded to a better camera, I've taken worse pictures. And the reason is that there is a learning curve. Going from a camera that I was familiar with and that I knew how to get the best from it, at least the best from my standpoint, meant that I took pretty good pictures with that camera. Give me a new camera, now I'm on the learning curve. Until I learn all of its foibles and learn how to deal with all its little details, I'm not going to be at my best. And therein lies the issue. It's not the camera, it's the person. There is no doubt that better tools are better to have. But simply upgrading for an incremental improvement in some feature that you probably don't even need is really, it's really wasting your money. So think carefully. Make sure that before you upgrade, you actually have a reason to. A second thing that came up is the fact that we make such a big deal of technical accuracy these days. We make such a big deal of low noise and of sharp focus, sharp to the corners. All of these things that we make such a big deal about because we can pixel peep. Pixel peeping, in many ways, has become the ruination of photography because we are now so concerned with the technical aspects of an image that we tend to sometimes forget about the fact that sometimes it's the subject, sometimes it's the emotional response we get from that subject that's far, far, far more important. I said sometimes. Let's face it, almost always that is more important. The family, you take the family photographer, the guy who takes the snapshots, the girl who takes the snapshots. Maybe they're just using their phone. Click, click, click all the time. But they are keeping a family record. And even though many of their images may not be very technically accurate, they may have all sorts of issues with focus, lighting, they are serving a very important purpose. They are the family history book. So, do not berate these people. They are doing a good job. Maybe if they had better tools and a little training, their pictures would be more accurate. But let's not get too carried away with those minutiae, those little details that really, in the great scheme of things, aren't that important. I mean, most of our images hardly matter anyway. It's like the people who run out and, oh, I've got to get a 45 megapixel camera because right now I'm shooting with just a 12 megapixel camera, and my gosh, I really need that better image quality. And then you look at what that person does with their images, and most of them are shared on social media, where basically you're looking at them at most as maybe on a 4K screen, roughly 8 megapixels. You're looking at the equivalent of about 8 megapixels maximum. Most of us are looking at them on a screen that's no bigger than normal HD, no more than 1080p, which is about a 2 megapixel screen. So what are all those extra megapixels going to do for you? Well, if you're going to print, they're great. If you're going to do product photography, if you're going to do portraiture and blow them up really large, if you're going to do huge landscapes to do wall-size prints, yes. But for most of us, all that means is that now we need more hard drive space, we need a more powerful computer, we now have a whole lot of other things we got to spend money on just to be able to process the images from that camera. So stop and think first. How do you use your images? Do you really need that much resolution? With regards to those technical details, a landscape photographer should be able to get them right. Now, here's why I say that. I know that's a very challenging thing, and it may sound like I'm simplifying things for landscape photographers. I'm not. Most landscape photographers, because of the type of images they take, spend a lot of time getting the image. They set up a tripod. They're usually there long before the light is what they want. They've got their focus set. They've got everything set for the exposure that they're pretty sure they're going to get, with a little knowledge, little background knowledge, with a little experience. They almost know which settings to put on the camera before they even start. And then they sit and wait. These people can get them very accurate. The result is you get beautiful landscapes because they were done with a great deal of care. A portrait photographer, they can also do fairly well depending upon how they're doing the portraits. If it's a case of you have someone who is willing to sit and work with you on a portrait, then you can also be very technically accurate. If it's a crank them through, you have this company that has 47 employees and they want headshots of all the employees, then you're just going to go for maximum depth of field and good lighting and click, 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 click till you finish. But in either case, they are going to be quite technically accurate. The person who spent all the time working with one subject will have artistically good images. The person who cranked them through will have technically accurate images that give a clear representation of the person who was sitting in front of the camera at the time. Take street photography, though, or photojournalism. And quite often you are in a situation where you must get the shot now. Your camera may be fast enough to take care of some of the details if you use some of the automatic modes, but you are not likely to get it absolutely technically accurate all the time. So you have to deal with that. You have to deal with the fact that you do have to use high ISOs because of bad lighting. That you do have to put up a little bit of noise in the images. Let's face it. If we look back at images by people like Henri Cartier-Bresson, they were shot on very grainy black and white film. And that was part of the charm of the images. So please, don't get yourself in a knot over the fact that someone over here has a full frame 24 megapixel camera that gets these super low noise, high ISO, really, really high ISO images, whereas you're shooting with a Micro Four Thirds camera. They've got to lug around that big gear. So they have their disadvantages as well. And sure, their images may be slightly better technically, but if you are a good photographer and if you are working at it carefully, the difference in technical merit is going to be made up for by the improvement in artistic merit. In other words, you get a better shot, and we'll ignore the fact that there's a little bit of grain. We'll ignore the fact that the depth of field isn't, shallow with this drifty background. I mean, really, isn't it the subject that's more important? Anyhow, that's about all I want to say, because the fact is that we live in a time when technology has moved to the point that any camera made in the last 5 years is going to take fantastic images. If you've got one that doesn't, there's either something wrong with the camera or you need to learn how to use it. Because there aren't really any awful cameras. Now, please, do not leave comments about how some off-brand point-and-shoot thing that was $20 at a corner store was a terrible camera. Of course it was. I'm talking about a quality camera. Whether you use Nikon or Canon or Sony or Panasonic or Leica or Olympus or Pentax, or I don't know if I've repeated anybody, and I'm sure I've left somebody out. But regardless of which of these camera brands, real camera brands you have used, you are likely to have a very high quality camera. If you need extra features, you decide which features are actually going to make a difference. Don't buy it just because it sounds good on a spec sheet. All right, folks, I don't have much else to say today. It's been a little rambly, but I tried to stick with my notes and not go too far. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll do the usual, YouTube spiel. Like everybody on a YouTube channel has to make sure that everybody, if you like this video, give me a like. If you want to see more of my videos, by all means, subscribe to this channel. And if you think someone might get something useful out of this particular video, then share it. And, as always, bye for now.